Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you're having a wonderful day, and today we are here with a video on what could be the most controversial soccer card to ever be made, honestly. It's not a fake card, it's not a trim card, it's none of that stuff. You can see it on the left-hand side of the screen right now. This is the thumbnail. We'll get into the card itself without the cool graphic. This is what it is, a 2022 Panini Instant Lionel Messi FIFA World Cup Qatar autographed with blue ink, 1 of 1. There is a 1 of 1 stamp on the back. This is the card in question that has caused all the commotion, and we'll get into why that is. To start, we'll cover a little bit about the origin. The Panini website sells Panini Instant cards for whatever they deem to be, notable enough moments in certain sports. This is what they have on the website whenever you go to it immediately at this moment. And you can scroll down, there's other ones. Basically, you can buy base, you can buy a numbered version, you could buy autograph versions, and ultimately, that is what we have today, one of these types of cards. This card in particular celebrates, of course, the Messi 2022 World Cup victory and has a picture of him holding the trophy as well. So looking at the card, we'll talk about the pros and the cons, at least from what I can tell. Certainly there are others. Would love to hear your thoughts down below. Of course, do let me know what you think of this card and my opinions on the card in a comment. I would appreciate that greatly. But we start with the pros. So the 4 pros I have here. The first is that it is a Messi World Cup victory related card. I think that is certainly the biggest sort of driver here. If Messi had not won the World Cup, this card does not exist, and thus there is no fanfare around it. Second, the picture is definitely, sort of what induces a lot of this excitement for the card. It's a picture of him holding up the trophy that's so eluded him for his entire career, and he's finally got it, and so there is that, sort of joyous moment, and it's perfectly encaptured here on the card. Third, it is autographed, so of course you have the Lionel Messi auto down there. As far as I'm concerned, that looks like a legitimate Lionel Messi auto. Some don't. That one looks pretty good, so that's a good thing going for it. And finally, it is a 1 of 1 as pictured on the back. You can't see it here, but again, just trust me on that. And then for the cons, because of course there is not just one side to this. First off, it is a Panini Instant release. Within the hobby, the set that things are in is wildly important, and Panini Instant is, in most scenarios, a throwaway card. The challenge I would, throw out to people is what's the second most iconic Panini Instant soccer card? And preferably not one that's related to this Messi World Cup win. What's the second one, right? And that's going to be, somewhat difficult for people to pick out. I certainly have some ideas in mind, but that's sort of the point, is that, Panini Instant doesn't have this history of putting out amazing cards. Really, it's just a lot of throw-ins. Secondly, there is a sticker auto, not an on-card auto. So, as you can sort of tell on the card, it's one of those ones where, the guy signs a bunch on a sheet, they pick him off the sheet, and then they put him on the card. So Messi never handled this card, but it does have his autograph on it. Third, it is not a pack-pulled autograph. Of course, as we talked about prior, you can buy this on the website, so it's not your typical sort of hobby release. And then finally, price point would be another pretty big con in this scenario. We'll talk about that here in a second, but that's sort of what stirred up a lot of this talk, is the price at which it's sold at. Of course, if this was, say a $100 card, I don't think people would be, debating back and forth, right? So we'll get into sort of what stirred up a lot of this controversy. The first one is Card Collector 2. He posted a reel, pretty big account on Instagram, 125K followers, big store within Ohio as well. Shout out Ohio. But here we have a reel, and one of his most viewed reels. I'm just going to throw that out there. Obviously it's got a big card in there, but that's nice to see if you're a soccer guy. We'll take a look at the reel. Won't have any sound, but you'll be able to see everything he's saying. So basically talks about how he'd be divorced if he bought this card, the coolest 1 of 1 on the entire show, and he goes to show the 1 of 1 Messi. This was at a card show that he was at. Sort of the big thing is what we'll get to here in a second. Really cool Messi card. Of course, I do agree. I think it is a cool card. The ask, though, $1 million. That's the real thing that sort of stirred all this up. Whoever owned this was asking what is a pretty crazy price. We'll talk more about that later, but basically in soccer, there's only ever been, I think, one card to sell over $1 million, and that was an Alifa PSA 9, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but, point being, $1 million is not anything that you're realistically going to get. It's not what this guy ended up getting. He still got a lot of money for what it is, but yeah, basically in the comments, a lot of debate back and forth. You can read through it if you want. We sort of have a lot of the takes that are in these comments within this video, so I make a lot of those points. But basically, this is sort of what started it, right? Turns out, a month or two later after that's posted, we then have the PWCC sale. So this was on the PWCC premiere that ended just a couple days ago, and it went for $126,000. And so for the week or two that this was, being listed and talked about, there was just a ton of debate. And honestly, sometimes it's very hard to tell where people are coming from. If you know certain people, you'll be able to understand where they're coming from. But if you don't know, the hard part is there's people with tons of really good Messi cards that probably don't think that this should be in the group of really good Messi cards. I don't own really good Messi cards, but I would probably agree at least a little bit. And then there's also the group that, probably has the base card of this, or maybe a numbered card of this, or maybe an autograph card of this, or maybe an on-card autograph of this. And, those people also want this card to do really well. So there's sort of two forces: people that already have Messi cards that don't like this, people that probably also already have Messi cards and maybe have these that do like it. And then there's just sort of the hobbyist that says, this is a really cool picture, it should be worth a lot. And then there's sort of the more collector type people that are like, this is a Panini Instant, why is it worth anything near this? And so there's just so many different angles you can take from this. There was a good post here by the Huddle FC where basically it goes through, some of the big one-of-one sales for Messi within the last year since the World Cup. This one sells for 126, as we saw prior. This Gold Power PSA 10 goes for 218. We have a black Prism that went for 160 in a PSA 9. We have a black sticker that went for 140 in a PSA 8. You got the Nebula as well, and you also have a breakaway black at 51K. So just some of the comparables within that sphere, and as you can tell, it's sold for a pretty respectable price, at least compared to those. So I also looked at the sales history on Card Ladder to see last year, or I guess the last 13 months, what has sold for between $100,000 and $1 million. And there is 548 results here. There could certainly be more, but that's all we have here. All in all, there is either 7 or 8 soccer cards. I can't remember. It's a lot of scrolling. Please forgive me. But point being, there's only 7 or 8 cards in soccer that are anywhere close to what this card sold for. And, I think the highest soccer card you're going to see in here would be the 71 BIS PSA 10. Yeah, right there. Sold for 266. So essentially, this Panini Instant card was made and printed in that same year and instantly sold for half the price of the highest selling soccer card in that same year. So this came out and immediately became just an instant grail, for lack of a better word. So that's where we are. In terms of where I stand, I lean a little bit more towards hating it than loving it, just because of all the fanfare and all the talk that it's really gotten. Going into some of the added points as to why, the first is competition with products. We just saw, I went through 5 different Messis or 6 different Messis that were all one-of-ones from the same year that you could easily make the case are better one-of-ones. Now, are they? Who knows? That's up to each person to debate, but I think that just the competition alone within all these products is something, to speak on. In addition to that, we didn't even talk about, some of the Eminence releases that are really, really high-end and, extremely hard to get your hands on, and at the same time, those weren't even pictured in what we were talking about. So, competition with products is huge. Second, the price history of soccer, as we talked about, there's only 7 sales in soccer the last year that were even that high. If you look before 2020 and sort of this COVID run, and basically the growth of soccer cards, if we're being honest, soccer's grown quite a bit from the beginning of COVID till where we are now, despite, sort of the ups and downs. But prior to COVID, $100,000 plus soccer card was essentially unheard of. I don't believe it happened. Now, maybe it did with something super rare or obscure, but from what I can tell looking back, it's not perfect, but there's really nothing like that. Maybe 50K was about where things would go, but for a brand new sticker auto card to come out and sell for, more than anything really ever sold for a few years ago, that is a bit crazy. Also, the cost to manufacture it is just minuscule. If you're looking at it from the point of view from Panini, they grab this $3 card off the presses. They sell it for $3-4. You could probably make it for like 50 cents. I don't even know. And then you throw a sticker auto on it. Presumably they probably pay Messi a couple $100 per sticker auto, maybe more. I don't know. I've seen Ronaldinho by Leaf got paid like 90. Obviously Messi's a bigger name, but nonetheless, it costs them a few $100s to make this. And now it's gone on auction and sold for, however many multiples of that. When we looked at that Instagram post of of other one-of-ones, for example, the black sticker Messi, the one-of-one Panini sticker. I mean, think about how many boxes of Panini stickers they made, and there was only one in that entire thing. So the cost of manufacturing that whole release and being able to find it is just infinitely higher. And then finally, and this is one that doesn't really get talked about, it doesn't really look like a one-of-one. Like, if you showed me this, I would just think it's sort of a base auto card. I mean, there's really nothing all that impressive and shocking in terms of the, display feature. Of course, having the one-of-one printed on the back is nice, but at the same time, it doesn't really stand out all that much to me. And so in conclusion, I think it's an amazing moment captured on a card, but I think ultimately the card itself has a lot of poor fundamentals also working against it. That's not to say it's a bad card, but that's to say it has to, sort of fight through a lot of other things. Ultimately, it only takes 2 collectors to push the price, so the fact that we see this huge price, a lot of people think that's a win for them in some way. I don't know how that's a win for anyone other than, I guess the seller getting more money. Obviously, it shows people, care about this card, and that's fun. I like seeing people care about soccer cards, but that wasn't really something I internally debated before this. I see people spend lots of money on soccer cards all the time. I know people care. And I think it's important to note that likely the buyer is going to have strong hands. If you're going to throw out a, close to $130,000 on a soccer card, you probably can hold it, and they can wait for a number if they like. So maybe this sells for more in the future, but I think that comes down more to that buyer being able to hold out and find another buyer rather than this truly being worth that, right? I think if this got reran on auction, it could go for $50,000. Who really knows? But the point being, there could be a far fall if it were to rerun. Now, obviously, that's probably not going to be the case, but if you just play that out theoretically, it's worthwhile. And then for the final point, what I worry about is that people believe that this is proof that these cards are great, that these Panini Instant cards are amazing, that the base card out of $22,000 is still a really, really cool card and deserves to be sort of flaunted and, pushed in the collecting space, all that type of stuff. Just the amount of people that almost seemed personally insulted by this being deemed not as great of a card. I know people talk about, a lot of people were, talking bad about this card, but I think that's sort of fair. I mean, it's a sticker auto from Panini Instant. There's not many, literally, I talked about it earlier. You cannot tell me another Panini Instant card that's a grail of any other player, basically. There's really nothing. It doesn't exist. Now, obviously, this is extremely special, and I get that, but of course, you have to have both sides battle it out, and I think that's really what we had. So I'm glad that, the community really went at it, and there was people on both sides, because that's what you want, ultimately. You don't want it to be an echo chamber of all the people saying the same thing, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed me putting that all out there today and sort of my opinion on it as well. Of course, I would love to hear yours down below. Do feel free. But yeah, that's going to be it for me today, so hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. I'd appreciate it greatly. If you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. And with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.